Wait. Oh my gosh. What a scene. Let's do that again. All right. Seriously. Why don't we for fun? Like,
do you want me to start again?
And, like, take two, it's called.
Please join me in welcoming Baz Luhrmann.
If you want anything about drama. Cut. Is there an AD here? The idea is I call action, all right? You stand up, Melissa, right, stand up. Okay, good. Ready? And say, what's your last line? What was the cue?
Please join me in welcoming
Baz
Luhrmann.
Okay, right. And then as you come in, right, everybody stands, right? And applause, except you sit, okay? You know why, all right? We're going to find that out later on in the discussion. Standing by, and action, Melissa.
Please join me in welcoming Baz Luhrmann.
I know I shouldn't have done that, but you were awesome, by the way. If this student thing doesn't work out. Anyway, that's what I do all day, Try and make a little drama or a scene. Anyway, Melissa, why are we here? And how can I be useful?
So I'm going to ask you a question. So
yes.
It's kind of based on what you just did. You're well known for creating films in which the audience are aware they're watching a spectacle.
Yes.
And upstairs you were talking about films as having a language of their own, or your films having a language that is distinctively Baz Luhrmann. And I was wondering what inspired you to try that style? How did you find that style?
Well, I did already answer it upstairs. We had a little chat on the way in. So I have to repeat it. Can I have some water?
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
go ahead.
good.
Take your time.
Right. Let's take our early lunch break, right? And we'll come back after to do the scene. I did actually answer the question a little bit earlier upstairs. And, I mean, it's not that I go distinctly Baz Luhrmann. That name now becomes kind of, I'm old enough, and believe you me, I am old, right? And I'm old enough now to recognize that kind of your own name, you're distant from it. It's kind of become brandish, if that's a fair expression. But what I said upstairs, and it was true, is that I said two things. One, I said, that's a really good question, right? And I said, and to be really honest with you, when you do junkets and stuff like that, you get these questions that you hear 1,000 times, and sometimes you say, that's a really good question, and you're lying, right? Because you're going like, well, it's not really, it's a pretty good question, but I've heard it before. So you do have to, right? But it was a really good question, because it's not that no one's ever asked me that. They usually say, what's inspired you to do The Great Gatsby or to have a go at reinventing the musical, But they haven't ever actually said, like, why did you, or did you asked the question, right? Did you set out to make films that weren't like films before? I'm trying to remember what I said, right? Yeah, and I actually said, well, I'm going to try and answer that. I went to say, actually, nothing in culture really isn't like something before. Like anything in culture, almost everything has drawn from something before. And with my case, having grown up in a very isolated place, having this kind of, by happenstance and by romance and by isolation, having a connection to an older style of cinema and storytelling. I brought that into the equation. But I think it would be dishonest of me not to admit that as this sort of kid from a very small country town who probably was carrying this feeling of like, I'm a nobody loser geek, probably I had an inherent need to make things that were distinct and that only I could make, that were my own. And I think that led to an honest admission of a desire to maybe be somebody. And then I think that led to the idea that, you know, I suppose we were saying upstairs, well, what's the opposite to somebody is nobody, and who wants to be nobody? You know? Is there anyone here who wants to be nobody? Put your hand up. No, apparently, yes, in the green t-shirt, you did put your hand up. And how would your nobodiness take its kind of form? What did you have in mind? When you become nobody, what will it feel like?
I am a nobody, and I'm quite happy to be a nobody.
I don't know about that. You see, that led to another question upstairs, where someone asked me, like, do you constantly watch stagings? It was a funny thing with Mr. President, or some know him as Chris. You'll see him over on the left with his arms folded. And the thing is that Mr. President, we were having a chat. He moved to a place in the room. We were talking about staging, why he moved to the place in the room, what that was in denial, what does it mean, right? So it was a staging. And that led to, for me, even today, as exhausted and kind of over it as I am, you know, when I just think like, right, maybe I should do something else or retire or whatever, I think the one thing that still keeps me going is that everybody is somebody, actually. You know, there are no extras in my films. They're characters. And, you know, simple point, when we did Moulin Rouge, when we do it, and I work with my wife and my team and everybody, every extra is given a name and a character, you know? So everyone is somebody. But I am fascinated about your nobodiness. What's your name? John. And why do you think you're nobody, John?
No, I'm quite happy to be a nobody.
But what does that mean?
Well, because it's basically someone who's sort of like just like the general populace generally. They don't get noticed, they sort of just go under the surface and they just lead a normal life. You know, they just, well, I don't know about whether I lead a normal life, but they lead a life that sort of like doesn't get on the radar, and they're quite happy about it.
So a nobody is someone who's not noticed. Is that what a nobody is?
Can be. That could be one aspect, yes.
Well, I mean, is it or isn't it? Like, what's a nobody?
Well,
By your definition. Sorry, John, I didn't want to get into this debate, but you being such a nobody, you did bring it up.
Doesn't have any influence on the world, but I do believe that a load of nobodies, when they get together, can become somebody.
Okay, but that's a deflection. That's a brilliant, by the way,
collectivization.
That is a brilliant observation. And no, it's actually a really great idea, and we'll get to ideas soon, because by God, we need them at this moment in time. And that responsibility, if you don't mind me saying, would be resting squarely on all of your shoulders, because I'm done, right? But John, you're not, all right? That's deflection. So a nobody is what? Someone who doesn't get noticed? Let's stay on the...
You're trying to make me into somebody, aren't you, Mr.
You're already
forcing
famous, right? You got famous about 2 minutes ago. But I'm not even being facetious, and I'm not debating for the hell of it, although I only learned about 15 minutes ago when I'm actually at the debating society. I thought it was just kind of, you know, the union that, you know, the Unity of Students Union. I didn't realize it was that. But John, jokes aside, and I'm not being facetious, right? Because it's a good thing to say, look, I don't want to be a somebody, I want to be a nobody. But I don't know if that means what you think it means, or I certainly don't understand what you're saying. Can you help me?
I'll jump in for you, John.
Well, I just think that a lot of people are nobodies in the world, really. I think the average person, because basically, like for instance, when I was growing up, I would say that people on the TV were people on the TV, because I didn't grow up in a TV family. And I mean, on the other hand, I've lived in places now where I bump into celebrities all the time and all these supposedly famous people, and they're all just like normal people, and I've worked with people like that, and in fact, you know, what is celebrity? I mean, it's a load of nonsense these days, relatively, you know, sometimes. So I think most of us, most people, in some ways, are a nobody. John, until they actually do something which defines them, I suppose.
I'm completely wrong. I got it completely wrong. I'm so sorry, forgive me. What you mean is that a somebody is a celebrity. Is that what you're saying?
No. Somebody is someone... It's someone who has an influence in the world that I suppose it's someone who's of note, I guess.
Who's what?
Someone who's of note.
And does anyone note you at any point?
No, I don't, well, they are now, aren't they?
Do you have any friends?
Sorry?
Do you have any friends?
No.
Are you lying?
Sorry?
Are you lying? You have no friends.
I think it's pretty. I've got lots of acquaintances.
You know, I've actually got some witnesses I'm going to bring in here. This is being set up. But I tell you what, we could go on quite a bit. But I do not mean, of course, when I went, I want to be somebody. I probably went from a very small country town. I want to make a mark, or not be in a, because everything was the world at large to me. Like I lived in a very isolated place. We had a farm and gas station, shop. But people just came and went all the time. And yes, we had a black and white television. And yes, we did own the local cinema at some point. So the television and the cinema was some sort of portal to the world at large. But mostly, it was pumping gas and sort of being invisible. And every single person who got out of a car, whether they were middle class, working class, gypsies, the Bee Gees. They're a singing group from Australia, the Bee Gees. Yeah, imagine that, right? Pretty sure I saw them. Anyway, I'm a bit of a mythomaniac. Anyway, the point is, they all seemed compelling and fascinating. And as a kid, you're invisible, so you absorb and listen. Now, here's my point. Yes, I want to be a somebody, but I don't mean somebody. Doesn't everyone want to be a somebody? What I really mean by that, and what you find out, because I am older than you, John. That doesn't mean you probably know nothing. In fact, the more you know, the less you do. But what I mean is, you want to be a somebody, and you started going like I want to have done something. I want to be something. I want to not be nothing. And then, of course, you get to a point on the journey where you go like, actually, you never get there. And probably what it morphs into, and I don't want to sound like it's a science or that I know, there's a reason why we have literature and books and films and shadows of ourselves. But it's essentially that the life thing is about, it's always going to be about that question. Like revealing who you are, really. And it never stops. So when I say being somebody, I guess I meant finding out who I am and then revealing that. But I didn't think that when I was little, So how's your journey going? The self-revelation journey, John? Yeah, how's that going?
I'm not trying to reveal anything.
I've got a feeling that's going to come and tap on your door pretty soon, just guessing. But anyway, look, it's a good conversation because I genuinely am asking that question of myself right now. What I don't mean is celebrity and fame. Maybe that's dishonest. Maybe I would have gone like, definitely one thing. You definitely look at movies and that, and you go like, oh, that person up on that screen, they're remarkable, or isn't that magic? And what's that like? Wouldn't that be great? So I was definitely compelled towards that. But then, of course, you find out that it's an illusion, how you make it and all of that stuff. But what I really mean is that maybe it's true. Maybe there is maybe I'm trying to think of a character in literature or in film who pursues nobodiness. Does anyone know one? What's your name? Me. Yes, you are me. And you are somebody. Me.
Sam.
Hey, Sam. How are you?
Arthur Dent in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Just wants to be nobody.
But he's in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he wants to be nobody. And does he end up there in that story? I'm not that familiar with it. My son loves it.
I don't actually remember. I haven't read it in a long time.
So is the twist that in the pursuit of being nobody, he becomes somebody? Is he an interesting character? Is he compelling?
Yes.
He is.
Yes.
I can tell you that, and I don't know the material. He's compelling.
You need to read these books.
I'm on it, right? Please don't tell my son that. I think I pretended I did, all right? And he's 12, right? But you see my point. He might be pursuing nobodiness, but you're compelled to be interested in him. So he is somebody. I think. I mean, it's kind of it's a semantics thing, right? And I don't want to get too wrapped up in it because I'm not trying to make like a clever point, because it's not that clever, but actually we're all kind of stuck there. Basically, I'm in the business of the human condition, not that I know that much about it, and part of the human condition is that, you know? And I could be wrong, but I think people are compelling.
You do seem quite philosophical, Baz. And I wanted to ask you, basically, how do you think meaning then features in your films, and how do you make them truthful, even though they are so theatrical? How do you weave those moments of truth into your movies?
Well, I mean, the whole thing is, I'm in the lying business, really, you know? I mean, such a topical question, right? So topical, because like the use of theatre, theatrical mechanics, cinema, a camera, an iPhone, a YouTube, you know, a picture, an Instagram. Like, you know, how do you tell the truth when in fact, we were just saying, if I'm making a documentary, right, and I want to tell the truth, John's truth, right? Sorry, John, I'm going to use you as an example. But if I did, really, I come down, I want to talk to you with a camera. If I took that camera now, I want to talk to you, right? And I want you to tell me the truth. I'm going to say, I'm going to represent you as the most truthfully as I can. Where do I put the camera? Because if I put it a little bit lower, right, you're one thing. If I put it there, you look really good, you know? Do you know what I mean? And I could be making a documentary. So every single choice with that camera and this light, and even like just grabbing it, like, is that the truth? I'll tell you it is. If I do a voiceover and the voice of God says, you know, and that, you know, John was engaged and blah, 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 and we hear it and when we see the picture, we go, well, I'm really believing that. But we all now know, and it's blowing my mind. I don't know about you guys, but it blows my mind when you go on the internet and you see really good filmmakers. You know who they are? Like younger people who frig around, or political actors or interferers who can take the medium and make something that's not true seem truthful. So that's in the hands of everyone, and like people are brilliant at that at the moment, and they're not even educated in it. They're not taught to do it. So the style that I have worked in is one where we were talking about earlier, like the fashion of storytelling when I was growing up was psychological realism, right? The idea is that you create the illusion of reality. You hide that you're telling a story, right? You know what I mean? Like slow, wide, introductory shots, you know, I got the groceries or whatever, you know, and you're learning about the character, all that. There's another style of storytelling, which is very, very old, where actually, and you know, the big thing with that, psychological drama, is that you're learning about this, you're hiding the story. You're not supposed to know how it ends, you know? How's it going to end? There's another kind of storytelling where you know how the story's going to end. There's an old storytelling, you know, two households both alike and dignity and forever and without sin, and thus, with their death, bury their parents' strife, you know? And I said earlier today, it's like being told in Star Wars, you know, the evil empire's going to be all wrapped up in, you know, episode 200 or whatever, you know? You're being told how it's going to end before it begins. You know, why do you do that? So that you know how the story's going to play out, and that you're not trying to hide the story, you're able to elaborate in either language, or music, or resonance, or poetry, just a different mechanic. So I guess, I don't know if I did it, I did do it on purpose, actually, now I think about it, because, you know, you always rebel against what you were brought up in, and I was brought up kind of around the French New Wave and psychological drama, and, you know, Brecht was really big, minimalism, all of that. So I was kind of reversing all of that. But I did hook onto, and I now realize, probably because I grew up a lot, we had this cinema, we played a lot of old movies and things like that. This idea that you could know where the story was going. You said it's a big lie. We're going to tell you a great big lie. And you've got to participate in that lie. You've got to sign on and be involved in it. But if you do, then a greater truth will be revealed. And we're all on an even playing field. Am I making any sense at all? Are you sure? You can say, what are you talking about? Because you wouldn't be the first people to say that, really. You should see it on the set. They're like, he's on about. But what I'm saying is, it's a style of storytelling where you agree to participate in a big theatrical dance so that you're trying to make a larger point. And Shakespeare does that pretty well. All sorts of some of the old, Citizen Kane, you know, you've got a pretty good, last time I checked, Citizen Kane begins with the death of Charles Foster Kane. Well, we know how it ends. So why tell the story? To find out why he said rosebud. What does it mean? All the journalists saying, what does it mean, rosebud? What does that mean in his life? And how did that make him somebody? How did he go from being not a nobody, but how did he become so significant, powerful, and corrupted by absolute power? And so the movie begins. So it has what we call the contract moment in the beginning. Melissa, if I go on too long, you just have to say,
no.
Cut.
Do you want me to be like, next
Yeah,
line?
I do,
Okay.
honestly. I do babble. I just babble on, and I'm a bit like, it runs in my family. We can't really land the point. So, be really aggressive about, because I would not like to leave here unless, I would honestly like to be kind of useful, because honestly, I've got no skin in the game. I'm over it, right?
I wanted to ask you, how do you decide which stories you're going to adapt? How do you even start that process of, okay, Romeo and Juliet, it's been done 1,000 times before and we're going to come at it like this?
Yes.
How long does that process take as well?
Well, it's a very real question. Not so much a good one, but it's a very real question for me because I'm going through it right now. And it's a bit like, for me, it's like a big marriage. At the very least, it's a big relationship, And so there's a lot of dating and kind of flirting and checking each other out and going like, "Ooh, that was good. Oh, I don't like you. No, I would never do. No, never ring up again. All that. Boom. At some point you go like, you know what, I can't get rid of you and you can't get rid of me. Let's just be honest, we're in love. We are in love, and this crazy chemical force is smashing us together, and right? Okay. And because the moment I marry a story, I'm stuck in that relationship until it is over. And it is not over till the baby is born, and the baby grows up and goes off to college, which is a metaphor for, say, a film festival, right? Years later, and people come out of the ether and they go like, I'm in love with your child, And they start telling you about something you made with a whole lot of other people, and you have no idea what they're talking about, And they sort of talk to you like, as a parent, I have a young daughter who's in love, and they talk to you, and you sort of go like, yeah, but, she's my daughter. But you just love them, and you know them and love them in a different way. You can never be, ever, when you make something, you can never be the audience, And fanhood and the love of a movie, increasingly when you do what I make, is quite hard to find, And I miss it. I really miss the days of being, just an obsessed and possessed fan. Am I anywhere near the question? I just can't remember.
Just asking about adaptation, how,
Oh, yeah,
you've
okay,
answered
right.
that. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Okay, so what do I do? So what I do is, and I'm in the middle of it right now, and just because it's us, I can tell you a few things, but we'll keep it among ourselves, all right? I have all these things that I work on and I tuck away and I write, and I have them in a room. And honestly, someone who's worked with me, like I have a large extended group, and I train different people over the years, and they go away and they make movies themselves and they produce and so on and so forth, and they come back. But the other day, Scarlett Weiss went to, very clever young man now, makes married children, makes movies in Sundance. But he was assisting me, and he said, Gatsby was on lists whatever about 5 years before I even thought I'd make it, and it was floating. And then I do go through this process of going for two things. One, it's very selfish in the beginning. One, not what do I want to make, you know, like the Bond and all of that, I'll be like, yeah, I love that, oh, okay, you know, or, you know, there was a show that came called Harry Potter, you know. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that could be fun, you know. What an idiot to say no to Harry Potter, you know. It was the first one. Think how wealthy we would be, but, you know, and how popular I'd be here at Oxford, because it looks like I'm in Hogwarts, you know. So, but I go, yeah, but not you want to, but what do I need to make for my life? Like, what do I need to understand? How is that going to sustain me, and how's that going to make me, like, get up every morning for 2 years minimum, day and night, 7 days a week, pretty much 24 hours a day, and go like, yes, this is really, I'm in pursuit of something. So getting to that answer is a long and tortured process. Ask anyone who works with me. But once I say yes, then it's on, and you can't get off it. Once you start to make one of these pieces, it is not over, to use that old-fashioned saying, until the fat lady sings. Like, it just isn't over till it's over. It's not. There's no turning around, there's no turning it off, there's no saying like, you know, I got it wrong, you know, sorry umpire, I don't want to do this anymore. No. As a wonderful Australian filmmaker called Peter Weir, who helped me when I was very young, when I was making my first film, he said, filmmaking is pretty much the only thing left on the planet like war, where one person still has to make every single decision. You know, if this was a scene, your clipboard, what's on it, right? The way your hair is, that light, every single one of you, the fact that the way you're using your iPad there, I would have given that note. I would have said front row, left, you know, and just bring up, head up, and, you know, every single decision has to be made. And so, that increasingly in the world, that's pretty rare, where someone's got to make all this. And it's just kind of absorbing, and, you know, every time you make one, you go, that's it, I'm never doing this again.
In terms of being the director, of being the general of your film, how does that feed into when you have an actor like Leonardo DiCaprio that you've worked with since he was basically a child through to now? How do you see your impact on him when you're directing him? And has your relationship maintained or stayed the same since the start?
Well, he just does everything I say exactly as I tell him to. I'm joking, and you better add that on the end of the quote or I'll come after you. Listen, first of all, and I work with so many mediums, you see, like, and I don't really even think of myself as a filmmaker. Honestly, I don't. Or I make a lot of music, I've done election campaigns, you know, all sorts of adventures, creative storytelling adventures, narrative adventures, idea stuff. But with Leonardo, just because I knew him when he was 19, and he really is, you know, you always hear people on chat shows and stuff going like, oh, they're so great, man, I just love them, man, they're fantastic. But he is so great, and I do love him, and he is fantastic, meaning ever since I've known him, he's been consistent. He has been only impassioned by two things. One is acting, like crazy impassioned by it, and two is the environment, just obsessively impassioned by it. Your question's a good one, though. So early on, when Dee came down, I mean, then there's his father, who's a great friend, George, and his mum, his whole family. And there's no doubt that when he was younger, I mean, he was studious. Do you know, with Leonardo, I remember in Romeo and Juliet, we were doing the scene, you know, he gets, we were shooting it in Mexico, and we got wiped out by a hurricane. And it's where he hands the gun up, and he's been violently hit by Tybalt. And we couldn't get it finished. So we got wiped out in Mexico, and we went to San Francisco. We'd run out of money. Studio didn't want the movie anyway. I mean, they were so like, well, they weren't but they wanted this, they were kind of acquiesced to making the movie. So there I am in San Francisco trying to cut the film, and there was CM, who was my wife, Catherine Martin, with a piece of blue kind of polystyrene, painted blue, and we had one big fan, a cameraman, and a fan, and a blue polystyrene, just enough behind his head. And the idea is, I can't remember, I think like Tibble grabs him like this. There's no other actors. And there was me grabbing him, shaking like this, and throwing him on the sand. He's got blood, and he's like doing the scene. And he would have done that over and even when I went we've got it, take 35, he'd want to go for another 10 takes, because he could do it better, he could do it better, So he was always driven like that to do things at the absolute best he could. So that was one thing. Even though you call cut, and he loved life, he's not like a monk who would go he didn't cut, now I must get my sleep, He likes to live a little, Leonardo. But on Gatsby, quite a different story, because he went from being a boy to a man. And it was a true collaboration. He was an equal partner. He knew the text as well as I knew the text. He had studied, I lived that film. The research is always a great joy. I get completely lost in it for years, too long actually. Studios are always, will you please stop and just make the film, right? But, and we worked with the great academics on it, and I met with academics with him, and there was a scene, and even with, we had the doctor device in it, which actually came from another Fitzgerald novel that he never used. And we even had the person who began psychoanalysis come in and do psychoanalysis of, and that became the scene. So he lived it, but he's a total partner in the creative process, he and Toby, and there would be nights, where we're shooting in the morning, it's 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, still going around on how we're going to do the scene. So that's the big difference. He was a boy with great instincts and tremendous drive, and then he became a man who was a partner in the act of storytelling, and a genuine and true partner.
Thank you. Well, that's all I'm going to ask you for this portion of the evening. So now I'd like to open out to the audience. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone to come to you. Let's start with this young lady here.
Thank you so much. You're such an inspiration. I wanted to ask you about the role of costume in your creative process and how your wife has influenced how you perceive clothing as crafting a character or crafting a spectacle.
What's your name?
Naomi.
Naomi, with an N, right?
Yeah.
Like Naomi Campbell.
Yes, exactly.
Naomi. Hey, Naomi. Look, it's a good question. I don't say it's a good question. I have been asked it kind of before, but I will say this. The creation of a world, because most of the things I make sit in worlds, and it always starts with extremely detailed and exigent scientific research. We're research nuts. Having done the Get Down, which was, the early days of hip hop in the 70s, I think we've got the biggest computer library or, digital library of, stuff from that world, okay? So we start there. And I have an extremely close relationship with my wife, Catherine Martin. Yes, she is the one with the 4 Oscars. That is her, yes. And yes, she does bring them to breakfast every morning and slam them down in front of me. Hi, darling, how's it going in there, But she's truly brilliant and an absolute genius. That word is rusty. Neither of us really believe in that word, no matter how it's used. But she's incredibly gifted. But there's a process. And I do always bring in my bad scrawls and scratches. She's so nice about it. She says, oh, darling, your drawings are so emotional. But really, they're like these bad scribbles that nobody has any idea what they are. I think she just humors me, And of course, there's the text, and there's all those things. But most importantly, the difference between Sam doing just like a beautiful frock, we call it, and a frock can be a men's suit or anything, and actually making a costume, is that a costume is a dramatic device. Meaning, that if I'm in a scene here, if this scene was running for a minute and a half, the amount of times you would, I mean, films are different, but the amount of times you would go to a super wide and see all of us, maybe 15 seconds, max. That's long. Then a few, 2 shots maybe. I mean, this is pretty banal directing, by the way, 2 shots. Like maybe a nice tracking shot along here, right? An ECU slam on John, right? You know, and him going, I am nobody, right? I will not have him tell me I am somebody, right? But it's internal, John, internal, right? Not saying the words, it's internal. Perfect, right? That's one cutaway, okay? And then one to you. But mostly, might I say, actually, even that joke aside, I am making a joke, John, right? But even that aside, to shoot John, right? It's a mid-shot. So on the screen, over 1/3 of the screen, maybe 3/4 of the screen, is going to be a green t-shirt and a purple beanie, right? In his costume. And if he's a major character, which I have now made him, right? You are a major character. You are the character player in this scene. But can you imagine the decision to put John in that green t-shirt and in that purple beanie? How that's got to say something about who he is. How that's got to reveal more about in him, even if it's just a cutaway. Same if we cut away to you. So even with me, like mostly you'd be here, you know, you might be a bit looser, you might get in there, okay? So it's extremely labor intensive. You know, I come with a big gesture. I don't go and say like, so darling, you go dress them. That's not how it works. I mean, there's none of that on anything. Just because I'm involved in every aspect, because I'm sort of bringing I guess I'm like the conductor. I bring the sheet music and the stick, you know. But where Sim's incredible is that she'll forget her craft, which is peerless. I mean, well, I think it is. And her ability to collaborate. So when we collaborate with Mucha Prada, who, by the way, very few people know, but Mucha Prada, who has a brand called Prada, it's an Italian brand, her first ever menswear line was when we made Romeo and Juliet. She made this suit that Leonardo wears in Romeo and Juliet. So, and she was the first person and husband ever to see the film. So I guess what I'm getting at is it's both very process driven, and then there's an area where she just has what I would call flourish, you know, a brilliant twist or a great idea, or I tell you a great idea of Siam's, like a really good one. So most of the stuff I'd be very much, you know, a pink suit, blah, blah, blah. Pink suits, right? Gatsby. Gosh, I wear them all the time too. Like right now I'm working on different things and there is not this costume, right? But I'm getting things made just to see what they like to wear. And so the pink suit, I must have bought like so many different pink suits. Then we got them made. And we're always arguing or debating the pink. Exactly what color pink, you know, blah, 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 blah. How do we get that to read on screen? Testing it, 3D testing with Leonardo. This is just on the suit, right? And at some point, it was pink with a white stripe. And that white stripe was really picking it up. And that was a CM thing, you know, just a white stripe, quite subtle like this, pink. But her really brilliant thing was that Fitzgerald describes in the beginning that Jordan and Daisy, as Nick walks into the room, there's kind of like air fluttering, there's big curtains, and it's as if somehow in their fluttery dresses, it's the 20s, remember, and you know, essentially women went from wearing crinolines, right, big corseted dresses, to their underwear. You know, they're in slips. And they were fluttering in the wind. That's how it's described in the book, you know? And I, of course, thought, well, she's got to be in her 20s, flappers, you know, beautiful silk fluttering in the wind and all that. And where Siam was so brilliant was she went like, no, but it's just not going to, like, she's just going to, it's like this is the reveal of the star, and she's going to get up and she's just going to be in this, you know, slip. How does a slip look photographically? So she identified that in that period, because we identify the 20s as, you know, the slip dress, right? This is the big revelation. There's a thing called a robe de style, which is a tight dress with a huge structure like this, equally as famous in the 20s, equally kind of exciting. And she brought that silhouette to that dramatic moment, to that reveal of a character. So I guess I'm trying to show you some snapshot of how it works, but Naomi, is that enough on that?
I think that's the best answer I've ever got, and I have 2 degrees in fashion history, and I think you spoke better than any of my professors on the subject. So thank you.
Well, I'm available for a job at Oxford because I am thinking, I'm just saying, like, I'm going to give up the film thing. It's all too exhausting. Not that being a professor isn't, I'm sure.
Thank you for your question. Let's go to you right here. Sorry, is he here? Just wait. No, you're still right here. This person. Is it going around? Thanks.
It looks like some sort of drama exercise. Pass the microphone.
Okay, so you said earlier, and you just said it again, that you're kind of over filmmaking. So what advice would you give to the next generation of filmmakers, screenwriters, anything that you'd like to see be done that was not done in your generation?
What's your name?
I'm Haley. Haley.
Haley. Okay. I think it's the same advice. I did not write. There's a song called the Sunscreen Song, which my name is attached to. Some may know it, may not. It's a spoken word song. And I don't want to go into a long thing. I did not actually write it. I just found it on this thing. No kidding. This thing was so long ago. Someone came to me and said, hey, guess what I found on the World Wide Web, right? That's how long ago it was, right? And on the World Wide Web, I found this speech. Long story, I was going to work with Kurt Vonnegut, who's a writer, and we were going to do an opera of Slaughterhouse-Five in East Berlin. That's the exciting life I used to live, right? And I found this speech, and I was trying to learn to produce records, make music, blah. And Anton Monstage, I said, well, look, it turned out it was a hoax. He never wrote it. It was a commencement speech, actually, for university. But he never wrote it. It was written by a journalist called Mary Schmidt. I know you're wondering where this is going. Don't worry, there will be a point. It'll just be epic, right? You've seen my movies, right? They're a bit confused and they jump all over the place, right? Okay. So anyway, I recorded it as if it was Kurt Vonnegut, you know. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of do one thing every day that scares you. Anyway, there's something about advice in there, which says, basically advice is pretty useless. Kind of, yes, it's useful, but not so much. Some people just wipe it off and turn it over and reuse it and all of that, okay? So what my counsel, or what my question is, and I'll get to my tedium, which is probably a bit faux. It's probably faux tedium, meaning that a few more years will go by and go, what was I thinking? I was able to make movies. Why didn't I just make more of them, you know? But what I think my counsel, well, forget filmmaking, forget storytellers. So a quick question, everyone. Where are we going and what's about to happen? Are we not in some sort of, I mean, history and narrative tells us we're heading towards some sort of cataclysm, you know? I mean, that's all right. The world, you know, the tectonic plates of history tend to go, every now and then they rub up against each other and causes tension. There's a sort of volcanic eruption. Sadly, tragedy ensues, sometimes on a large scale. I don't know what that is. But out of it is born the new world. And my take, my guess, for what it's worth, is that, and it's not just old guys, because I'm one of them, but, so it's unfair to say old guys are just clinging on. There might be some old women, I don't know, but really the last period of time is like with their claws, clinging on, like scrabbling on, holding back, you know, making things great again. Be careful. I mean, I didn't mean to be political. I mean, like, you know, there's a line in the Gatsby, you can't repeat the past. So trying to repeat the past, like pull it back, stay away, you know, all that. And I'm not taking a political point of view, happy to, over a glass of scotch if you're buying, right? Point is that it's doing that, causing tension that way. But there's this thing called you. And you're not really doing that. You might be going like, I like it the way it is. But there's definitely this energy going that way. And you are growing up going, your experiences, your world, your this, thanks a lot for leaving the world, you know, in the condition it is. Do you mind? I want to breathe the air or whatever it is. And it's going that way. So it's causing massive tension. And I guess, I get around a lot. I was in Shanghai where I've been working on something a few weeks ago. I've been like, gosh, I don't know, everywhere, you know? And I talk to all sorts of folk, right? But definitely the question of democracy, is it broken? Did the Greeks contemplate the mass media? Did they contemplate the World Wide Web? You know, can you fix it? What about the... Well, my take is narrative history tells us every now and then there isn't just a correction, there's a big tension break, you know? It's like when they all went running onto the fields, you know, those cousins that got angry. We were talking about this earlier, you know, those cousins got angry and they run onto the fields, you know, and said, well, let's have a little war, you know, with some horses and swords, and right? And then you hear, it's called a machine gun, you know, they dig holes, and it's the greatest cataclysm that the modern world knows, right? I don't want to be a downer, you know what I mean? This could have a musical number involved, like, you know, but something big is coming, and I guess where I'm leading is, there is a desperate need for a new idea. So my counsel to any maker of narrative, teller of story, is to be feeling what's in the air. And you know what, sometimes it's really important to man the barricades and do films about, let's all get together, we've got to protect our homeland, or let's all get together, we're going to, you know, rally. And sometimes when history is so greatly shifting, it's as important to tell a story that says, you know what can I do with the person that I love that in my way reminds me what it is to be human and what it is to be loved, and in a incremental small way make a rich and beautiful life, you know? So they're personal choices. But I definitely think my counsel to everyone is that the need for the, not even big ideas, but definitely fresh ideas. It's an emergency on planet Earth, in my view. Does that even approximate answering your question?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. We have time for potentially one or two more. We go to this person.
Hi. So in the spoken word piece that you mentioned earlier, you say advice is a form of nostalgia, and you've just given her and us great advice. But in your films, do you see sometimes in your direction, maybe in retrospect, kind of yourself in one of the characters, or when you pick a film, do you find that you often identify with a specific scene or one of the crescendos? Yeah.
What's your name, sir?
Rem.
Rem.
Yeah.
R-E-M.
2 E's apostrophe in the middle, but yeah.
Well, Rem, I love the bit about the crescendos. My life is nothing but crescendos. It's just non-stop crescendos all the time. And petal drops, you know, confetti. I'm only being a bit funny because actually, well, silly, which is a device I use a lot. I use a lot of silliness. I hope sometimes to make a larger point. It's not a new idea, that's an old storytelling mechanic. But the other question you ask is a very interesting one, because I never set out to go like, right, I am Nick Carraway. Oh no, I'm not, I am Gatsby. Right? Okay, I'm really Daisy. You know. The way she flicks her hair like that. Yeah. Or Nicole. But the weirdest thing happens, and it really does happen, and it's happened almost every time. And I forget about it, but I just do the work and I work on it. And actually, and I know this will come out so hugely pretentious, but I am burdened with that problem. Everything I say comes out hugely pretentious, you know. But it's a fact, it's true, it's true. When we work on those stories, I tend to work on these kind of iconic-y stories, right? And we have a running gag in my organization, which is you can pretty much cast every movie I've made with the same cast, right? There's always the young couple. There's always the Spanish grandmother, right? Whether in Strictly Ballroom or in Romeo and Juliet, you know. But what I recognize, and I really do, is that somehow I feel akin to all of the main characters at some point. And maybe that's what that great writing is about. You know, in quest myths, usually you have the main character. Like, there are so many versions of quest myths, but popular ones might be The Wizard of Oz or Apocalypse Now. You know, and you have, because they're really from sort of primary Greek myths like, you know, Jason the Argonauts or the seeking of the Golden Fleece. But essentially, someone's going somewhere, but they usually bring characters along with them. And those characters, you know, the Tin Man, the Straw Man, the Cowardly Lion, they just represent all other aspects of one person. So they're kind of really good dramatists, are brilliant at sort of explaining the whole universal human condition that all of us feel somehow. Like, I don't know, even Jordan Baker, right, who's kind of has a souciance about her and a sort of I don't care and all that. And is she, you know, gay? I don't know. Does she really love him? Is she shallow? Is she a climber? Is she not? You know, but there are moments in that book where you go, really, it doesn't matter whether you're who you are, you really understand her. And you go, yeah, I know what that feels like. And that's true of all the characters. So at some point, I kind of feel like there's a little, not a little bit of me in them, but definitely a little bit of every one of them in me. And I think that's why any reader of a great book, I think that's what makes books, good storytelling, really great. Ram, I think.
Thank you for your question. We have time for one more question. I'm going to go to...
This is like a big, wide tracking shot, you know, like this. And then some close tension. You'll get it.
The person kind of a few rows back with a watch on.
Watch person.
Watch.
Hi, Baz.
Hey, what's your name?
I'm Pat.
Can you say it again?
Patrick.
Patrick.
Pat, yeah.
Not with like a double E and an ampersand.
No.
But just Patrick. Okay.
My question was just about, so most of your films, in fact, I'd go so far as to say almost all of them, they draw on the classic archetype of sort of these star-crossed lovers. And I was curious, when you use sort of those themes, do you intend generally to either flesh them out? Because it seems as though you paint the passion all over the screen when you kind of tell these stories, or if instead you intend to sort of rewrite those themes and maybe do something new with it.
Well, Patrick, I think the question is, the funniest part of this is that it would appear that all I ever do is love stories, right? And the funny thing is that I never set out to do that. And I'm always going like, right, I'm really going to do this psychological war film, you know? I'm really, really dedicated to that idea. I have so many of them, you have no idea. But somehow I always end up, and by the way, I think it's not, and not to, I know what you're saying, but they're not so much star-crossed lovers, but they definitely tend to center around conflict in love. And I mean, I am now old enough to admit I'm in the love business, you know? And the thing about love, being a parent, is that there's so many kinds of love, you know? There's love, there's this kind of youthful, I mean, Romeo and Juliet is what I call, I said this once and it came back to haunt me, but champagne love, you know? It's youthful love, it's out of control, it's intoxicating, it's like driving a sports car in Italy, really drunk, you know? It can't end well, right? But it's awesome and exciting, you know? Anyway, right? I'm too old for that, but hey, right? Thing is, that's that love, and then there's love in conflict with society, you know, revolutionary love. You and I, we connect because we feel the same, that this world must change, and that you're the only outsider other than me that really understands that. And then I really like you, and now I love you, and we're wedded in love that is in conflict with society. Or impossible love. I love that, like the whole Gatsby thing, is that Gatsby has an absolutely incorruptible motion picture of his life in his head. And not only is he writing, directing, and producing and doing the production design, but the studio is not going to get in the way of how that movie is going to play out. And when he says Daisy Buchanan is going to be his number one love and marry him, that's how it's going to end, you know? Says his dear friend, I think you might be asking too much of Daisy, because maybe she doesn't write the story that way, you know? That's a different kind of love. And actually Leonardo, speaking about Leonardo, was the one that pushed the characterization in that. I mean, there's a more charming version of that. And great classical works are there to be interpreted in different ways at different times, depending on what's needed out there. But he really pushed the slightly psychotic side of that, you know? You know, she's going to be with me. I've got to get back to that moment where it all went wrong and make it right. And I'm going to be richer than Tom, and she's going to come over to me and love me more. And I don't know what Tom's going to do over that river there, like probably just wave every now and then and go like, wow, you won. You know, crazy talk, Gatsby. Fucking crazy talk. You're mad, right? Thinks, you know, his dear friend Nick, going, he's crazy, right? But he's crazy in love, you know? So that brand. So what I think, and Patrick, tell me if this answers the question, because although there's all this stuff, you know, the colour, the movement, the pedal drops, and all of that, and also the slightly serious underlying part, whether you see it or you don't, which is the pursuit of the big idea, the decoding of the big idea. There's a reason why we, on Gatsby or any of these things, I work with the great academics for a long time, just to kind of get in underneath it, but decoding that for a certain time in a certain place. And there's all of that, and then there's, you know, how do you make jazz? I mean, Fitzgerald puts jazz, actual African-American street music called jazz, puts the records in the book. And critics are like, why are you doing that? It's a fad. That jazz stuff will never last. It's just this thing the kids are into. But how do you make jazz exciting and visceral, or seem like that it's not classical music? You know, so they're mechanical things. And so yes, I guess I am in the love business. And the truth is that maybe now I'm heading towards retirement and looking for a job as a professor at Oxford, I can admit that I am a romantic. And I think a romantic is not what you think. You probably know it. But I did check that out, and romanticism, like Byronic, I think Byron went to Cambridge. Did he? Does anyone know? Wrong school. I got to go. It's been really nice. This is not the romantic school, but Byronic romanticism, or romanticism in general, is the belief that things can actually be better than they ever actually can be. That you really, and Gatsby's got that. I mean, he's the poster boy for Byronic romanticism. And, you know, it gets wedded to calamity. But there's definitely something in me that is wedded to romanticism, this idea that things can be better than they actually are. Would that be like a closing line?
Yeah, that's a really nice closing line.
Okay, cut.
Yeah.